This is High School Sports Talk presented by VirginiaPreps.com on ESPN Radio 94.1.
Back here on the program before we get to Kate Yanchulis from the Washington Post, Matt Hatfield alongside the coach Ed Young here on High School Sports Talk presented by VirginiaPreps.com. We were chatting earlier about the Hall of Fame coach Monroe Rateau, Ed, from Fluvanna County, who beat you in the state semis. And wouldn't you know, we've got on the line, I believe this is Beth from Chesapeake. This is Coach Rateau's daughter?
Yes, it is.
How are you? Thanks for calling in.
We're good. We just happened to turn on the radio at our campsite, and you were talking about my dad.
Unbelievable, Beth. Your dad was, I know he's not coaching anymore, but boy, when he was on that sidelines, he's a tough guy to go against.
He was a relentless competitor, and he's been retired 3 years. However, after the first year, he came back, and he was the assistant coach the past 2 years.
Oh, really?
At Fluvanna?
Yes. Yes.
He just couldn't give it up.
He could not give it up. He says he's going to now.
Okay, because Ed might try to recruit him to be an assistant coach with him next year. So
yeah, he's one of the most knowledgeable out there. I know that much. And as Beth said, well, heck of a competitor. Beth, did he ever coach you in any teams that you play on?
Yes, he did. He coached my JV team, as well as assistant coach for varsity girls in the mid to late 90s. And he coached my sister on JV as well.
Okay, now I have to ask you, was it tough being the daughter of a very hard competitor, winning, driven coach, or was he pretty good at separating the two, dad and coach?
He was good. However, I think I was the only person he ever told that they were worthless.
Oh, my God.
On the court. However, my mother gave it to him when she got home that night.
Oh, my God. I think he probably used the wrong terms. He meant something different.
He meant it with love, Beth.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. We got over it. We got past that.
Wow, that's a great story. With any other story you could share about your dad? Any behind the scenes story?
Well, he only had one undefeated season, and that was coaching JV girls basketball. Other than that, he did. I think one of his state championship years, he lost either 1 or 2 games.
So his only undefeated was the girl. Now, were you on that team that was undefeated?
Yes.
Wow. Well, you couldn't have been too worthless if you're undefeated.
Well, yeah, I was better JV player than I was a varsity player, but we had fun. It was great being a coach's kid. My sister and I both are ultimate gym rats. And there was nothing better than having a coach who happened to be your dad. My mother, I don't think, missed but a handful of games over 35-year period. But it was something that we loved as a family.
Well, that's awesome. Well, enjoy Father's Day weekend with him, one of the all-time coaches from our state at Fluvanna County. Beth, the daughter of Monroe Rateau, Hall of Fame coach from Fluvanna County with us. Thank you for calling in. Don't be a stranger and tell your father we said hello.
I will. He wore his 2 state championship rings to the game yesterday. So,
nice.
Give him my regards, Beth.
I will.
Thank you, Beth. Thanks
for your time.
Thank you.
Beth from Chesapeake joining us as the baseball team from Fluvanna County won a championship, and Monroe Rateau was the good luck charm, Ed, as they got it done 16-10 over a local team in Tab. We'll be chatting with Lafayette baseball coach Rick Schenk later on here on High School Sports Talk presented by VirginiaPreps.com on ESPN Radio 94.1. It's someone that's covered a lot of the local teams over the years. In fact, she was with the Daily Press and HR Varsity, now working with the Washington Post. You can follow her on Twitter at Yanchulis. That's KYANCHULIS. Kate Yanchulis, our pal, joining us here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Kate, how you doing out there?
Good. I'm glad that you spelled my last name because I never think anybody's going to be able to follow me because it's a long one. But I'm good.
Yeah, we tagged you on Twitter too, so people can go check that out here and hear the interview later. Well, you got a chance to actually before we get to the game from yesterday. I want to get into we were just talking about with Beth. Did you play some sports growing up in high school? Did you get a chance?
I was about to say I sympathize with her because I played basketball just Catholic Youth League basketball. I went to Bishop O'Connell up here in Arlington, Virginia, and I wasn't quite good enough, coordinated enough to play on the high school teams. But my dad was my elementary school and junior high coach, and similar to her, I think he was the hardest on me of anyone. So I could sympathize with that.
Okay, this is Ed Young. Good to hear from you again. But did he ever call you worthless?
I don't think worthless was used, but I definitely got the most criticism and the most kind of disappointed looks, just because I feel like he could, the dads feel like they can do it to their own daughters, but you can't do it to somebody else's kid. But we won a local championship in 7th grade, so we had some success too, so that was good.
Did you call him coach or dad or coach dad?
Usually coach, I think, when we were at practice and stuff, but I'm sure I let it slip a few times.
Well, you got a chance to see a pretty neat ball game yesterday. South County won the Class 6 softball championship 1-0 in 17 innings with a wild sequence over Cosby. Tell the folks a little bit about that, and did it remind you a little bit of that defensive struggle in football you had a few years ago? That's the first thing I thought of, that Bethel Phoebus game you had that was scoreless for forever.
Oh, it did. And then actually Marty O'Brien, who's still with the Daily Press, had tweeted at me because he had covered that War Hill game, that softball game that went 18 innings 2 years ago, which is actually the state record in a state final, 18 innings. So this was 1 inning short of that state record, although that was in the back of my mind as well as they kept going. But yeah, it was scoreless through 16 and a half innings. And each team had a few scoring chances, but really these two sophomore pitchers were incredible. Cara Martin for South County, and then Taylor Norton for Cosby. They went, it's not like baseball. There's no pitch counts that they have to worry about. So they both had pitched 7-inning wins the day before in the semifinals, and then came back out and pitched 17 innings yesterday, and took the scoreless game all the way to the bottom of the 17th, and then South County got a runner on second base, and there was a ground ball hit to the Cosby shortstop, and she kind of bobbled the ball. The South County runner, Shannon Johnson, got to third base, and then went to throw the ball across to the first baseman. The ball went wide of the first baseman, and she was able to make it home, and that was the only run of the game-winning run, but it was wild.
Yeah, it sounds like, and you got to see a lot of great athletes down here in Tidewater, and you see plenty of them up there in Northern Virginia near the D.C. area, as you mentioned, coming up from Bishop O'Connell, and whether it be basketball, football, softball, baseball, tennis, you name it, soccer. Cara Martin's performance to go 17 innings in a state championship, that has to rank up there pretty high on your list of individual performances you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, she has been incredible all season. Like I said, she's only a sophomore. She was the starting pitcher for this team last year in South County, and was good then, even improved this year. I had people after she had both pitchers yesterday had 20 strikeouts in 17 innings. She had 16 strikeouts in 7 innings in the semifinal. So, people were asking, are you sure she's only a sophomore? Where's she going to school? And she hasn't just figured that out yet. She is only a sophomore, but yeah, South County's set up pretty well for the next few years if she's still in the circle for them.
Yeah, pretty remarkable, the fact that she's only a 10th grader and getting it done. Kate Yanchulis, our guest here from the Washington Post on High School Sports Talk, presented by VirginiaPreps.com on ESPN Radio 94.1. Ed?
Hey, Kate, I want to broaden out a little bit. Of course, you were down in this area for a few years covering many of the sports that we have down here, seeing a lot of tremendous athletes. And now you go back up Northern Virginia, back to your home area. I got to ask, can you make a comparison of the teams, the athletes, maybe coaching styles? Is there much difference, very similar? Is anything like kind of pop out to you that's in terms of differences?
I will say that up in this area, like the Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. Area, one of the things that's funny for me in terms of coverage is that I have to worry about three, so D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and even the WCAC. So there's a lot of different playoff structures and districts and conferences going on there. So, if you think the VHSL is hard in terms of figuring out the districts and the conference playoffs and all that, trying to keep the three different states, region, areas straight is a headache sometimes. So that's a lot. But in terms of styles, I think that in this area with the professional teams kind of looming large in Washington, D.C., the passion of high school sports finds like pockets. There are certain football teams, the Good Counsels and the Gonzagas and DeMassas, and the same thing with basketball and even these sports like softball and baseball. You get teams with really passionate fan bases, but it doesn't have the same kind of area-wide following maybe that the other sports do. That there are certain teams and certain people that have that following, but there's not a lot that can beat the Hampton Phoebus football games and things like that. Just because down there you really get the whole community invested in those players, even if they might not have a connection to those schools.
Now, and okay, another question I got to ask you: being on a female in a male-dominated profession, sports and whatever, and sometimes back in the day you saw a lot more of this than now. I think today it's so easy. Do you ever kind of get the leery eye of, oh, wait a minute, you're a sports writer? You're a female. Kind of people stepping back in the days. How's that for you in your business?
I will say I think I am lucky in that not only has it gotten better, but I've always worked with really great people, and I haven't ever come across a situation where I felt really like somebody's kind of like belittling me or questioning me. There's a couple times where people will joke about it or say something, but usually you can kind of just play it off or make sure that they know that you know what you're talking about. And it's unfortunate that needs to happen at all. But I think that we're definitely moving in the right direction. And so many, like I said, I've never had a coach or an athletic director who's been anything other than perfectly professional and really great to work with. So that's been great.
That's good to hear. Of course, I think that might run more of a problem, maybe, if it is a problem nowadays, college pro level, especially pro level. Because I remember.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. I think that definitely, I think, with high schools, they're number one usually having to work with in the schools with male and female athletes just from the ground up, and then there's a less a sense of maybe entitlement in terms of their positions.
A few more minutes here with Kate Yanchulis from the Washington Post. You can follow her on Twitter at KYanchulis, our guest here on High School Sports Talk, presented by VirginiaPreps.com on ESPN Radio 94.1. What's next for you now with the off season? I'm always curious with writers. I'm sure you get a little bit of downtime, a little bit of relaxation, some vacation, maybe go check out your Nats, and hopefully they'll get things turned around, right?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Well, I have a dog named Harper here with me, who was named after with Bryce Harper in 2015. So my family is dealing with that right now. Hopefully the Nats can turn around. I'd like to go see some baseball. At the Post, I also help out with the sports production on some nights and weekends. So I'll be working with that since there won't be as much high school stuff to cover. I'll go in the office. It'll be a little bit quieter. And then, like you said, going on a couple trips, a couple vacations, get some rest before, but high school football is really just around the corner. We got like a month to go, and then it'll be right back.
Yeah, it's such a big monster across the whole country. But up there, how's the high school football in comparison? Ed sort of hit on it with you earlier with some of the sports, dealing with the athletes, the coaches, the public-private sectors. How is the football? How would you compare it up there to down here? Is it more private school driven than public school, you think, or?
Yeah, I mean, there are the teams, and schools down there will know from playing them in the postseason. The Westfields of the world who are strong and kind of get that following. But obviously, the big names are DeMatha, Good Counsel, Gonzaga, St. John's now in Washington D.C. So it's really that WCAC circuit gets a lot of the attention. And, some people up here would tell you maybe too much of the attention. We do get some complaints about kind of the WCAC focus sometimes of the coverage, but it's hard when you do have, just kind of these NFL, preparation machines working to develop players. So it's hard to ignore the WCAC, but I definitely think, we also want to make sure we get the the public schools in Maryland and Virginia their time because, like I said, there are also great public school teams.
Yeah, a lot of talent up that way for sure, Ed.
Hey, Kate, I got to ask you one more thing before we'll let you out of here.
Sure.
You've done a great job along the way. I've watched your career from afar. I think you're very professional and your personality is very good for it. But I got to ask, any ambitions to move up to cover just maybe college and eventually maybe the pro level, or are you perfectly content with high school?
I like the high schools because it's always, I think that's some of the most fun you get to have with the coaches and the players in terms of talking with them. Literally, the South County coach yesterday was standing at third base and I was by the chain link fence right there and he was turning and saying are they going to give us a dinner break soon? So that's always, fun. But I wouldn't mind moving up, but I think I kind of hopefully at some point in my career where I'll get to write some longer form stories or kind of focus on big picture issues in sports, which I got a chance to do with someone at the Daily Press and at the Washington Post. High school sports can bring a lot of that out as well, but just less ambitions, I guess, less focused on one particular level of sports and more just on kind of getting more big picture stories.
Well, listen, last thing I'll throw in here, the guy in charge of VirginiaPreps.com can use your help. He needs help, and you would be absolutely perfect to guide him.
I need more help in more ways than one, Kate, because I deal with Ed every week. So
when you have downtime, Kate, keep that in mind.
I got it. I gotcha.
Thank you, Kate, so much. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll be in touch, all right?
Definitely. Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend as well.
That's Kate Yanchulis with us here on High School Sports Talk, presented by VirginiaPreps.com from the Washington Post Sports section. Does a great job and also covered a lot of the high school prep teams down here. And admire what she's doing too, Ed, because it's hard to go from one area to another area new and then go back to that area. And she's done a great job covering a mixture of sports, and especially in this now media where everything's so social media driven, and it's very challenging, as we've talked about before, even with Lynn Burke, with some of the newspapers and so forth, and in our business, everything's instant now, and subscriptions all over the country are kind of up and down like a roller coaster, if you will. But does a great job with them and covering some of the high school sports scene.
That's a tough area to cover. She kind of hit on the head about public, private. It's really private school driven in that area. And a lot of your better athletes are moving on out to the private schools.
And what's also interesting is you almost have to, like what we do at Virginia, you have to keep an eye on the whole state, because those teams that she touched on, the Westfields of the world, the South Counties, the Lake Braddocks, and so forth, they play our teams in the state tournament. So you also have to be cognizant of what's going on in Tidewater or Richmond or Roanoke. Whereas you remember back in the old AAA, AA, single A days, it didn't feel like you had to pay attention to that unless you were a coach in it and you're looking at the tournament and you might see that team. But the ones covering it and writing about it, you almost have to, because you see those teams in the playoffs. And furthermore, you sometimes see those teams in earlier rounds of the playoffs and in showcase events.
Yeah, I think when we switched to the six divisions, that brought that into more focus, that because you play them fairly quick.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to have an idea. And in her case, being a writer, having the experience down here and up there, she can be a little bit more in tune to who's facing who.
We're going to take another timeout. We come back. We got Rick Schenk of the Lafayette Rams baseball program scheduled to join us. We'll also take your calls later in the show here at 757-687-9494. Give us a call at 757-687-9494. And a surprise contestant for Fact or Fiction against Ed Young. You don't want to miss that at the end of the show on ESPN Radio 94.1.